We got a whole bottle here.
Yeah, they're hard to find though.
Are they?
Yeah. Now it depends on what. Let's see what letter you got here. You got the O. All right, the O is important. The O is important. I'm missing the O.
We got our O face on.
I've got 7 out of the. How many do you need? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've got 6 out of the 8.
Thank you. All right, so hey, let's just get rolling, I guess, huh?
Cheers. Good to be back.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
It's always a treat to have you in studio, Braden. How you doing, my friend?
Said nobody ever. I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Oh, man. I'm about to go on vacation.
Oh.
I'm going to Austin.
Cheers.
For a week. So you're really helping me out. So I'm going to put this out
next
Monday.
Okay.
Monday's our biggest download day, so
awesome.
This will be our best show. And always a treat to have someone in studio. So hopefully this does some good traffic.
You're going to a good spot, man. I that's why I moved to Nashville from Austin. It's
really?
It's a fun place, man. Yeah, it's funny, like Texas coming to the SEC. But
yeah.
I kind of grew up going to Texas games. I watched Ricky Williams and Priest Holmes in the same backfield, and very different atmosphere then than it is now. But
right.
Austin's a great town, very similar to Nashville. So you'll have a good time. Get some barbecue, get some brisket.
Oh yeah.
Catch some live music.
Let's start right there because I don't know if you saw it. I know you were busy this morning, but I believe it was Pete Thamel, ESPN, says Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC. It's not going to be moved up at all. At least that's right now. I mean, it changes month to month, but 2025. I mean, I don't know if do you have any insight? Why the hell is this taking so long? I mean, is it just money?
Lawyers are really good at their job.
Right.
I mean, that's it.
But as I understand it, so if they
or not good at their job.
If they come in 2025, the Big 12 gets nothing. If they leave early, they can get a huge fee. So the SEC wants it, ESPN, Disney wants it. I would imagine the Big 12 would want that money. So why is this not getting done?
So from what I understand is it's just a cost benefit. There's just a dollar figure there, and they can make more money. And it's not just the TV contracts or the amount. Like, let's make a number up. Let's say it's $50 million total, $25 million per school to leave early. Let's just use that number. If they can make more than that in 2025 on everything, right? Ticket sales. If all the other schools are going to make more money because Texas and Oklahoma are in the Big 12, just holding them down hostage against their will. Like, I mean, it does feel a lot like a marriage where the two parties are like, yeah, we're not married anymore.
Yeah.
But like, we're gonna stay in the house together. We're not gonna move out, and we're not allowed to see other people. But we have to stay in the house together and in the same bedroom, and that like sounds real awkward.
Yeah.
But like the dishes get done easier, and like the laundry is done easier, and like the kids are taken care of a little easier.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that there's a dollar figure somewhere behind the scenes that says, home games for major college teams in the Power 5 are worth like anywhere from $10 to $15 million per home game, and they're worth a lot more if it's Texas and Oklahoma than if it's northern Iowa.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming there's a calculation that's happened, and they've decided no, we have the upper hand here legally, so we feel like this is a better financial situation for us. There also could just be some like they got some diaper rash, and they just want to make things miserable for other people, which is their prerogative. I mean, the ACC is not any different. Like, the ACC wouldn't exist if it wasn't for like lawyers and the grant of rights, and like right now the ACC would be completely destroyed if it wasn't for all that stuff. So.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, let me ask you this: who do you think benefits more from a fan perspective? Texas fans that are going to be now not annually, but maybe every 4 years, what have you, get to visit Baton Rouge, Tuscaloosa, Nashville, Knoxville, or all these SEC fans who, hey, we all hate Texas. That's like one thing we can all agree on. But now we get to visit Austin. I was blown away by the fans and the environment for that Alabama game. I thought Alabama was going to go in there and beat the hell out of them. And the fans, I thought, nearly willed them to a win over Alabama.
Well, and having grown up kind of in middle school, like Drew Brees was a senior in Austin when I was a freshman at Westlake High School, which was before Lake Travis High School came around, which is where Baker Mayfield's from, and Garrett Gilbert, and like all these other all these quarter. So Austin's like this hotbed of football. But the crowd at the Texas games wasn't the same as it was for the Alabama game. Like, I think it's grown since then, and I think some of that is, first of all, that was a big game. It was Alabama. It was early in the season, so we didn't know what Texas was yet. And game day and the whole deal. Like, I think that they kind of overachieved, because I would argue Texas and Michigan are two of the quietest 100,000 seat stadiums. But my perspective was also coming from the mid '90s when I went to games there all through middle school, and they weren't particularly great. Like, this was before Mac Brown had gotten there. This was before a national championship, before Vince Young, and so they had really good players. I mean, again, I watched Ricky and Priest Holmes in the same backfield. And so it wasn't long. I guess I'm trying to get to, like, I think the crowd is excited and the fans are excited. The stadium has been built up around, like, it's gotten so big, the stadium, since when I went there. I was down there for spring practice. Tyrone Swoops was the quarterback, so this would have been like 2016 or 17. And like, it's even grown since then. So I think they've always kind of been building to this, and I think the crowd will take to the SEC. But I think, first of all, I don't hate Texas, so I know if SEC fans hate Texas.
You're supposed to.
Like, if I'm an A&M fan, like, I grew up, it's funny, sorry A&M fans, I grew up like most of the country learns, like, and they're probably not even okay to say anymore, but like, your mama's so fat jokes. Like, those are the jokes that I grew up, like, people that grow up with around the country. You grew up with, like, how do you confuse an Aggie? Aggies are so dumb. Aggies are so stupid. Like, you come up with Aggie dumb jokes when you live in Austin. Like, when you're, like, after church on a Sunday, you're going to the sports bar to watch a football game with your family or your friends, and you're like in 6th grade, and you're like trying to come up with how to confuse an Aggie jokes. Like, that's how it works. So, like, I don't, A&M fans hate them.
Yeah.
But like, they need to play each other. It's better for A&M to play Texas. So I don't think I think Oklahoma is a more hated, in my opinion.
Really?
If I had to be objective about it, like, I think Oklahoma, and Bob Stoops in particular, has poked the SEC bear way more and been way more condescending and like holier than thou about how the SEC's not that great. Oklahoma's just rattling off championship after championship in the Big 12 until they actually play an SEC team.
Uh-huh.
I think Texas is kind of like, I feel like Texas is kind of just like wandering around in the backyard, muttering it to itself. And it hasn't been able to figure out, like, other than Vince Young, it hasn't really been able to figure out what to do with itself. And I find them to be less offensive than Oklahoma to some degree, partly because Oklahoma's been significantly better and more consistent.
Well, let me ask you.
So I think they both win. I think the fact that SEC fans get to go to Austin and Norman, they're two awesome places to watch games. I've been to both, and the fact that they get to come to all the other places and experience all the, like, it's just great. It's great for everybody. It's great for rivalries. It's great for money. It's great for fans. I think the whole deal is going to be great. It's great for recruiting.
Right.
I think it's great for everybody across the board.
And unlike the two Southern California programs going to the Big Ten, they fit more or less geographically, and two of the best fan bases in the country coming into a conference that has all the best fan bases already.
So USC and UCLA was as good a counterpunch as anybody could have thrown at the SEC, but there is no counterpunch to Texas and Oklahoma. There is no response.
Right.
Like, and partly because of what you said, and it seems like a stupid thing, but Texas is already the footprint. So you're already in the footprint. Now, do cable providers want to add a state? Of course they do. But, like, it's in the footprint, so it makes sense. It's a rivalry that makes sense. Oklahoma adds a state, but it's attached to two states in the SEC, right? So, like, it doesn't feel as unnatural as USC and UCLA, but there's no response. No other conference could have done anything that comes close to adding Texas and Oklahoma. The recruiting rankings this year, signing day was last week or this week, depending on when you're listening to this, and Texas and Oklahoma both finished in the top 4 in recruiting this cycle. That hasn't happened since ever. Yeah. Like, the modern era of recruiting, I think you have to go back to like 06, 07 since that's happened. And if you count them as SEC teams, Michigan and TCU, two teams that just played in the playoff, would be 11th and 12th in the SEC in recruiting. So like, there's no comparison. Like, what this does is it puts so much pressure on Miami, Florida State, Clemson, Michigan, Penn State, Notre Dame to like elevate their stock, because the SEC's added 2 that are in the top 5 in recruiting. Like, there's no response. I think the Big Ten did the best job they could have. I mean, other than blowing up the ACC and stealing Clemson and Florida State or Miami or North Carolina, Virginia Tech, something like that, like there's nothing close to taking Texas and Oklahoma. And USC and UCLA are about as good as they could have done. So you got to give them credit for that, I guess.
Well, let me ask you this, though. Oklahoma coming to the SEC, I've heard a lot of people say, good luck. You know, and we saw Lincoln Riley. I mean, that may or may not have factored into his decision to go to Southern Cal. Ironically, now he's got to go in the Big Ten. But is Oklahoma screwed from a competitive standpoint? I mean, are they – because everybody – you've been following college football as long as I have. I remember when Nebraska went to the Big Ten, the way I remember it was people celebrated and they're like, that's a hell of a move. I mean, they've just secured themselves, yada, yada, yada. And I think they went to like a Big Ten championship game, but they have largely been irrelevant.
Taylor Martinez, I think. Yeah.
They didn't get, they pulled away from Texas, the state of Texas. They're not able to recruit it. Now they're kind of on an island. I'm not saying it'll be that bad for Oklahoma because I think the SEC potentially elevates any program that's in it. But do you think that, I mean, they dominated the Big 12 the last decade.
Yeah. Well, more.
They ain't going to dominate in the SEC.
No, I don't think. Will they win like, I don't know what the numbers off the top of my head, but Bob Stoops, I think, won.
I mean, can they average
like
10 wins?
11.
I don't think.
No, I think they can. I think so. Every school, and Tennessee fans know this. Florida fans are dealing with it kind of right now. Like, no school is immune to the downturns. Like, it happens everywhere. Like, you hire shitty athletic directors and shitty coaches, and you're going to get shitty football teams. Like, that happens everywhere. That Tennessee's 15 years they've been wandering in the desert, and they finally feel like they've found themselves with the power structure. But it takes like Donde Plowman, Danny White, Josh Heupel to all be in place to kind of realign the program. Texas is actually I think Texas is more of a concern than Oklahoma in that sense. Because Texas has always had too many cooks it's very Auburn-ish. Too many cooks in the kitchen. Too many people want to have a say. They can't ever get themselves aligned, and it's why Texas, frankly, should have more national championships than Alabama. Like, they're the most powerful athletic department in the country. Oklahoma has always taken advantage of Texas's dysfunction to some degree, and that's why they've been the premier program. I think they can win 10 games if they have good coaches. The difference between Oklahoma and Nebraska, two major differences. One is the SEC logo on your shirt instead of the Big Ten logo. Very big difference there when it comes to recruiting. And you draw a 6-hour radius around Oklahoma, and you have 10 times the amount of players than around Lincoln, Nebraska. That's really the issue. Lincoln, Nebraska is geographically isolated from players. Yeah. Oklahoma's not as much. It's the DFW Fort Worth Metroplex is largely an Oklahoma market. I mean, they're a bigger brand than Oklahoma State, TCU, SMU, Texas Tech. They are the brand of one of the biggest cities in the country in terms of producing talent. So being that close to Dallas is a huge, I think it's a huge pull. Now, I think they're also in for a bit of an awakening when it comes to the week-to-week grind. I think the Big 12 is very good. It was very good this past year. They've got very good coaches, but I think it's different. Like, when you have to go, especially today in the SEC, which I think is lost on a lot of people, I think the SEC today is stronger around Alabama than ever before. And I didn't even mention the best program in the country right now, which is Georgia. So, like, LSU is going to be really stable for the next probably 10 years. Tennessee has a chance to be stable for the next 10 years. We'll find out about Florida, but I believe in Billy Napier. Auburn's going to be good. They won't be stable. They'll be good. And then it'll explode in their face somehow. If Bobby Petrino is there, however long Bobby Petrino's there, A&M's going to be good, or better, I should say. There's just Ole Miss is at the best it's ever been. Kentucky's the best it's ever been. South Carolina's overachieving right now. Missouri kind of likes its coach and is recruiting better than it normally does. There's just more there in the SEC than ever before. If Oklahoma had joined the SEC in like 2012, 2013, when it's Derek Dooley, Joker Phillips, Mark Richt, like guys that, Richt is pretty good, but like you get my point. Like that was not the same SEC as we have today. And I think that's
why a guy like Gary Pinkel was able to take advantage of it.
Exactly.
And
Pinkel's a great coach. I think the other issue is how good is Brent Venables? Like, that's the other question.
Yeah.
Is, I think there's a huge debate with the Lincoln Riley question, and as it pertains to coaches. I don't think I'm curious what you think about this. Do you think that coaches, knowing how they're wired, because they are paranoid, schizophrenic egomaniacs who are competitive till like the day they die. And it's kind of what you have to be a good high-level college football coach. I don't think the easier path to the playoff, or I'm scared of an opponent, or I don't want to be in this division because it's tougher. Like, I think that's complete horseshit. Like, I don't think a single coach has ever been like, I'd rather play an easier schedule and not win bigger championships. I don't know. What do you think? I mean, do you think I think USC is a better job than Oklahoma. I think USC is a more premier. You can get better players and you can win more at USC than Oklahoma. That's it. Like, I don't think it's more complicated than that. And like being in LA and it's different than being in Oklahoma.
Right. Well,
I mean, do you think a coach has ever taken a job because he's afraid of competition? Like that seems counterintuitive to me.
Well, just look at Nick Saban trying to hire a coordinator. I mean, that's kind of what it looks like. Some people maybe.
You think they're scared of the competition of SEC competition?
I think Georgia's passed them, and they know it, and they know, it's come to Alabama and win a national championship immediately. Otherwise, the fans are going to flay your ass, and Nick Saban's going to ride you 365 days of the year. And why put up with that?
But that's not the same as being scared of competition, though, right?
Well,
like being scared of working for Nick Saban, that's fair. Like I agree.
Right. I mean, you hear, what was it, like Sonny Dykes? What did he say? Something stupid like, we don't play Wolford.
In November.
Yeah.
Oh,
even though they play Wolford week 2.
No,
what I mean? They play some bullshit
they
team
played,
there.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, it's funny because he said, obviously that's a talking point that we've dealt with in the media for like 20 years. As I see. Like I've said this for like 15 years. Like, if you don't like how your team and your conference is scheduling, talk to them, because it ain't the SEC's fault. Like, the SEC is doing what's best for it.
Right.
Also, the team that TC was played 2 Power 5 teams in non-conference play.
Mm-hmm.
They played Oregon and Georgia Tech at the end of the season. One of them was in November. I think TCU played like not Charleston State, but like Charlton State in like week 2. I think they played Colorado week 1. But I think that's him. What he's doing there is just posturing, though. Like, that's not a real. He's not like. Does anyone actually believe that when coaches complain about that November schedule thing? Does anyone actually believe that SEC coaches are scared to play tough games in November, or do they think that's good business to have a little bit of a bye week before 2 of their toughest games, which are generally rivalry games, some of which are Power 5 opponents in non-conference play? Like,
I hear what you're saying, but also I think coaches, not fear of getting fired, but it's like they're always trying to stay one step ahead of it, and particularly assistants, and because I don't think any coach would take a job in the SEC unless it was an elite tier, unless they wanted some of that competition, like a Drinkowitz, like a Sam Pittman, because those jobs are so tough, you're almost bound to fail. Not because of those schools, but because of the schools you got to play annually. So there's something to certainly be said for what you're saying.
See, I think there's 2 sides of that. I would argue that all those jobs are better jobs, because here's the thing. If you go to South Carolina and you fail miserably in 3 years, what actually happens to your life? You make $20 million to go away? Like Arkansas, Missouri, Mississippi State. If you get hired and you coach for 3 years in the SEC and you go, I don't know, 15-30, whatever, you're not good. You're going to make a whole lot of money to go away and do nothing.
But a lot of those guys don't come back.
That's not true. They all end up.
Butch.
They all come back.
You know what I mean?
Well, but he goes to Alabama. He wins a national championship as an assistant, and then he gets a head coaching job. Again, it doesn't matter. What I'm saying is, he goes now Arkansas State, whatever they're doing. I could give a shit. But like, the point is that taking I'm going to use South Carolina, because taking the South Carolina job, because Will Muschamp got run out at Florida, made a bunch of money, and came right back and did it again. Got run out of town, made a bunch of money, and now he's just drinking beer around the Georgia facility, like drawing up some defensive ball plays. Like, I just don't think it's that bad of a choice. Like, I think coaches look at the money, they look at the lifestyle, they look at the prestige of putting it on a resume, and it doesn't matter if they win or. I mean, they're all competitive. They all think they can solve the world's problems and win a championship wherever they go. That's my point. Is I don't think any coach. I think they decide things on a far more personal level than a competitive level. Like, Like Gary Anderson left Wisconsin to go to Oregon State. It makes no sense.
Right.
Like Wisconsin's a way better job. It's easier to win, bigger prestige, more money. That's because his wife's from the West Coast and wanted to live out there. Like that's way more of a. He wasn't leaving Wisconsin because he was scared of competition. He was going because his family wanted to be on the West Coast, and that's where they're from. And that's,
Right.
Like, I think those kind of things factor way more into it than like, oh, I can win more now, because otherwise we'll find out about the Big 12. Like Luke Fickell just left what would have been one of the best jobs in the Big 12 to go coach at Wisconsin, which when they add USC and UCLA is going to be like this. It's going to get tougher for Wisconsin, right? Like Wisconsin's going to go down a couple of pegs in the Big Ten because USC comes in. And so he's going way up in competition, even though he could have stayed at Cincinnati and been like the big dog in the Big 12 for a little while.
Yeah.
So I think coaches are driven by money, and I don't think competition it's why NFL coaches draft players that they think are broken or, they think they can fix everything. They're these, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think, long story short, I don't think Lincoln Riley's scared of anything. I think he thinks USC is a bigger job, a better job, can get better players and can win more. And I think all that's true. And he's still got to go through the SEC in a 12-team playoff. He's still got to go through Ohio State now in his own conference. Like he doesn't have an easier path necessarily to
But
get
couldn't
there.
you argue people like I know Dabo's like his own breed, but I think I would say Southern Cal's a better job than Clemson.
Mm-hmm.
But he made it a spot to where I don't think they could get him from Clemson, and he may be an outlier, but I think you can make the jobs essentially better.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
And you never. And I guess this goes back to like somebody's wife wanting to live somewhere. Like I don't think you can. You never know what makes any individual tick.
Yeah.
Right. Like I learned that a long time ago. You don't. When it comes to coaches, you don't know what makes a guy tick. Otherwise, Matt, if it was all based on our analysis of how good jobs are, Matt Campbell would have left Iowa State like 5 years ago.
Right.
But like, what if he loves like this is why I thought Lane was never going to leave for Auburn, is that he has roots now in Oxford. He's got his son is going to high school, just enrolled in high school there. His daughter's about to graduate. Like his father lives there. Like he's got a family that's there, and Oxford matters more to him than going to Auburn. Like, and I think that's not about competition because it's the same schedule every year with less resources actually. So actually, he's probably challenging himself more by staying at Ole Miss. I think it's the craziness of Auburn and the entrenchment of family at Oxford that matters to him. I also think he's waiting for the Alabama job, and it's a lot easier to get that job from Ole Miss than it is from Auburn. So I think you just never know what makes an individual tick, and I think that's part of this. If you're casting a broad net, I think all these coaches are like ultra overt competitive egomaniacs that think that they can win everywhere they go.
Yeah.
And what's the worst thing that's going to happen to me if I suck at South Carolina? I'm going to make $20 million to go away.
Yeah.
Like that's pretty good living.
Well, let me ask you about Lane, because I asked this question to a lot of people, but his roster management. Stephen Lasson and I were just talking about it. Last offseason I thought it would be an epic disaster, and not that it was a great success, but they started hot. They obviously finished. It was a big dud, but they had an opportunity to win the West late in the season. Had they
One game,
right?
Yeah.
Do you think it's something he can keep us up? Because Stephen made a great point. I mean, you're kind of reliant on who's going to go into the transfer portal to have that model keep working. But we all know also that there's dealings behind scenes. You can ensure players go into the portal.
Force yeah. You can open doors to the portal that don't always exist. I think it's fascinating. Now, I guess I would start this conversation with how many times has Ole Miss played in Atlanta?
Yeah.
Start there.
Well, someone tried to get me on that, and they played there last year.
Well, sorry, in the SEC championship game. Fair point. Touche. That's some dad shit right there. You're not allowed to make dad jokes yet, okay? Unless you got something running around you don't know about. No, I mean, have they ever played Atlanta? Have they ever played for an SEC championship? And so you start there with expectations, and you go, since integration, when's the last time Ole Miss competed at the national championship level? Never. I would argue 2 years ago with Matt Corral, best season in regular season history for Ole Miss, and if there's a 12-team playoff, they get into the playoff. I think that's the bar for Ole Miss. Could they have, kind of to your original, what you were alluding to with Ole Miss being 8-5, starting out hot, the schedule sort of was pretty obvious that they were going to, because the over-under I think was 7 for Vegas, it was pretty obvious that they were going to start with a bunch of wins, and if they didn't slip up, Kentucky, for example, I think they probably should have lost that game. They got fortunate on 2 calls at the end of that game. They probably should have lost. That puts them at the under, right? Because then they would have been 7-5, and the 7.5 was the under. So I think they finished about where they were supposed to. But the fact that they lost the best quarterback not named Eli in school history, off the best regular season team in school history, like their middle linebacker Chance Campbell, the best pass rusher, all these pieces were gone.
All 3 coordinators.
All 3 coordinators gone off of one of the best teams ever, and for them to come back and still be 8-5 is actually a huge testament to Lane.
Right.
Can they compete in the West routinely, or whatever the divisions look like? I assume no divisions. Like, can Ole Miss finish above Brian? And this goes to our point we were talking about earlier. Brian Kelly, LSU, Kirby Smart, Georgia, Josh Heupel, Tennessee, Nick Saban, Alabama, Hugh Freeze, Auburn, Jimbo Fisher, A&M. Can they continually finish above at least 4 or 5 of those teams every year? No way. Can they finish above a few of them every now and then, on and off again? Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Like, there's no question. Kentucky can win 10 games every now and then. Like, they've done that a couple times in the last 5 years. But I don't think expecting Ole Miss to use the portal to win 10 games a year and compete for SEC championships, I don't think that's fair, really. Of Lane, of Ole Miss, I mean, I think you have to. I still think you have to build through recruiting. 90% of players stay where they sign. Only 10% are changing. You know, could it be a super quarterback that changes?
Texas A&M.
Yeah, right. But if you look at the however many 3,000 kids that sign, about 90% of them stay where they sign. Yeah. And so the best teams are still built through recruiting first and foremost. You supplement with pieces that you need. If you're the best teams in college football, Georgia grabs a couple receivers out of the like that kind of thing. I just don't think you can. I think it helps teams like Ole Miss stay competitive. That middle class of college football, the upper middle class of college football, which in the SEC is a lot of them. It's Kentucky, it's South Carolina, it's Arkansas, it's Ole Miss, Mississippi State. Missouri maybe is more truly middle class. But I think it helps those teams stay relevant and good for longer periods of time. I don't think it can take them to elite. I don't think it can take them to you're going to be able to win 3 playoff games. You know, like I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't think that'll like. I call it the Michael Vick schools because those schools have to have like a transcendent quarterback that like changes the game to ever really be that level of good. West Virginia needed Pat White. Wisconsin needed Russell Wilson. You know, Jake Plummer at Arizona State, Ryan Leaf at Washington State. Like, you need an otherworldly, transcendent quarterback at those middle class programs to make them competitive at the national level. You know, Missouri with Chase Daniel was close in 2007 to making the national championship game, and they still fell short.
Yeah.
So
let me ask you this: Josh Heupel just got an extension through the 2028 season. Does he win an SEC title during that span?
I mean, if he recruits top 10 classes, there's a good chance. A lot of it's can you maintain.
Because I know you hate Joe Milton.
I don't hate Joe. You better quit putting words. You can put this whiskey in my mouth, but you can't put words in my mouth.
You've already told me Tennessee's taking a huge step back.
Yeah, I know, huge. They could be 8-4, man. What a huge step back. After losing historically great players. No, I think if you can recruit top 10 classes almost every single season, then I think Tennessee will be in a position to compete for SEC championships. I think we've seen, because LSU with Joe Brady and Joe Burrow popped up and did it, you have to sort of have the underlying roster.
Yeah.
And then a few things have to go right for you, and then you can absolutely beat Alabama and Georgia. You can do that. Do I think they win an SEC title in the next 6 years? Sure. I'll say yeah. But it's only if they have top 10 recruiting classes every year. Like, that's the only, like, Florida and Auburn at 12 and 13 and 14 in recruiting is, like, concerning.
Yeah.
And everybody else in every other conference would, like, murder someone and, like, get rid of their children for those recruits. and like, people in the SEC are like, oh, shit, we're, like, 6th in recruiting. I don't think we can win. Because, so, like, this Alabama, and fill in whatever name you want. Like you can put Tennessee in there. You can put A&M with Jimbo Fisher, Kirby Smart, Ohio State, USC. It doesn't matter. Fill in the blank with who's number one. But to be number one in recruiting, they signed 9 5-stars this year, 18 4-stars. Auburn, their arch rival in state, Michigan, the 2-time defending Big Ten champion playoff opponent, TCU, the team that just played in the playoffs, finished 17, 18, and 19 in recruiting in the rankings. Each one of them signed 9, 10, and 10 4-star players. So they're top 20 classes among the best in their conference. And they are not half as good as Alabama's class. They are a third. Alabama is not 2 times better. They're 3 times better because they have as many 5-stars as you have 4-stars. And, oh, by the way, they have twice as many 4-stars. So I say all that not to say that Bama is – it's that to be – because Georgia finished number 2.
Right.
To be 1 or 2 and to be at that level where you can get through a 12-team playoff and win an SEC championship game after an 8-game SEC schedule and then 3 playoff games – against top-level teams, you're going to have the best players. Now, your question was about SEC championships. Yes. Can you then go on to – Tennessee and Josh Heupel can do that. The question is then, do you have enough talent to win 3 games against Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Georgia? Whatever. Pick the order. And that's where you – like, traditionally, even in the playoff era, you got to be like top 8 in recruiting almost every year. Clemson, I think, is the only one, and they were like averaging like an 11th rated class when they won the national title in 2016, and that's because Deshaun Watson was an otherworldly player.
Right.
That people don't remember that Alabama and Jalen Hurts took the lead in that game. Like they would have won it, on a Jalen Hurts touchdown run if not for Deshaun Watson's brilliance in that one drive.
Right.
And so, I think extensions are. They're not really worth the paper they're printed on. They're just to celebrate your team being good, which is cool because we all know that Fulmer gave Jeremy Pruitt a giant extension about the same time
right.
2 years ago.
And
that didn't work out.
You can make the case. I don't like to put anyone on the hot seat during the off season because it's like I like to sell optimism. I don't like to shit on teams or anything. But 2 of the guys that you could perhaps say are on the hottest seats in the SEC, Sam Pittman, Eli Drinkwitz, both of them got extensions in the last 6 months. Yeah. So that's just how damn crazy we are here in the SEC with handing out money and trying to lock up guys after we have a little bit of success,
It's all optics, too. Like, it's about going to a recruit and saying, oh, yeah, he's going to be here for 5 years. Like, Josh Heupel could get fired tomorrow or he could leave for the NFL tomorrow after signing the extension last week. Like, it's not – again, they're not really worth the paper they're printed on. They changed the buyout, and that's about it. Otherwise, they're all PR. But again, it's a moment to celebrate your team being good. I mean, Missouri goes to a bowl game. Like that's a pretty big deal this year. They've been recruiting very well, and I would say while I tend to agree that of the 14, Eli's got some pressure to win, but like they're doing things better than Barry Odom ever did for him. Barry Odom was like Johnny alumni linebacker, Pittman it was beloved 12 months ago. Like, we loved Sam Pittman 12 months ago.
Well, they lost a couple one-score games. He's got to go.
Quarterback gets hurt, and you lose. The question about Pittman is, can he build another staff? Like, that's what I've always asked about him. Mm-hmm. Like, I love his good old boy, like, I'm just a guy talking to other people, just trying to relate and be a ball coach. I think that's a good thing for the sport. But you better have real good coordinators if you're going to be, like, an offensive line coach, like Sam is.
Right.
And be that CEO type of guy like Shane Beamer is, who doesn't have any experience calling plays. You better put together a really good staff. And he did, and then now he's lost both of them, and now we'll figure out. I think Dan Enos is going to be good for 1 year because of KJ Jefferson. I think that's going to be a good marriage. Mm-hmm. And then I don't know how much value he brings. And I do think Travis Williams is a good hire. I think that's a nice move by Arkansas. Pretty well respected in SEC circles, good recruiter. Yeah. I think that's a good move. But, like Dowell Loggins at South Carolina, I don't understand that. so,
five SEC programs coveted him.
You got to hire
Shane Beamer.
Well, and maybe that's just like being in Nashville for so long and seeing how bad he was for the Titans. I was just like, God, this is awful. College NFL is very different. So
the 12th person that has said the same thing about Dow Loggins. So hey, we'll see.
Yeah.
That's basically all it is,
Well, and like, are you going to eventually let me defend?
And we know you hate Spencer Rattler.
Are you going to let me defend Joe Milton and Spencer Rattler at any point
we'll
during
get
the
to
show?
That at some point. But I do want to ask you.
I don't hate. I'm with you though. I don't hate anybody. I don't hate anybody. I love the game too much.
You should hear what he says off air.
Yeah. I love the conference. I love the teams. I love the pageantry. I love the games. As a Tennessee alumni, there are stadiums and cultures and people in the SEC that I love almost as much as my own. I love all of it. I root for, especially guys like Joe Milton. I root for, but
yeah,
it doesn't mean I'm gonna lie to you and be like, yeah, he's gonna win a Heisman when I don't think he's going to.
Right. So. Well, yeah. People get pissed if you don't say exactly what they want to hear, you know. But going back to Tennessee, because I want to ask you about Nico. Who knows what we're getting with him? But with all the alleged money out there, which I'm sure I'm not questioning whether it's real or not. But do you think he'll be somewhat of a case study where if Tennessee does win an SEC, God forbid, a national championship, while he's the starting quarterback, will other programs delve into that? Or if he flames out, because he's probably going to have people that hate him now, and they're going to hate him his entire college career. And if he's...
You don't mean Tennessee fans, though, right? You mean fans of other teams?
Just anybody that was
that recruited him, or...
That we shouldn't be paying these guys this much.
Old guy who's about to die?
Or, but truthfully, there's probably many people that are like, I want this guy to fail, because I don't believe in this, given, you know what I mean? That's real.
No, there are fans, and you and I actually argued about players sitting out bowl games, and I think the fan that thinks players shouldn't get paid is also the same one who's like, you're quitting on the team! How dare you
but also
take your financial future?
Bryce Young and Will Anderson said they were playing. So I love that.
That's up to the player. My take is that this is, do we live in America or do we live somewhere else?
Right.
This is America. You get to choose what's best for your life, and that's it. The old fan who doesn't think a player should get paid, to me, is the same as the guy who thinks he has a right to tell a player what to do. And that's it. The team doesn't care if Cedric Tillman doesn't play. The team doesn't care if Jalen Hyatt doesn't play. His teammates don't care. You can't be more offended than the victim in all of this, which in this situation would be the team who was let down because you quit on the team. He didn't quit on you, the season ticket holder or the fan. He quit on his team. And if the team doesn't care, then you can't care because, again, he's trying to do what's in his own financial best interest. I think that's American. I think that's the most American capitalistic thing you can do. And getting paid $8 million or whatever the number is, I think there is a far more interesting conversation about projecting talent and paying for projections versus paying for production. The way money used to work in the SEC is you'd run for 150 yards, you get a stack of hundies after the game.
Right.
From some booster in the parking lot. $100 handshakes, right? Part of the game forever. And if you think that's amoral, I got nothing for you. When the coaches were making $212,000, we could argue about the morality of paying players, cheating. When the coaches are making $10 million, the players need to get a cut of that. Sorry.
Yeah.
We're in a different financial world here. And so I think, I hope that there's not... You're right. I believe you. There are plenty of people that are probably going to root against him because he got paid. If that's how you want to spend your life, I feel so sorry for that person. I just do. But there is an interesting conversation to be had about spending money on projection versus production. And five-star quarterbacks are 50-50 propositions.
Right.
You got Arch Manning at Texas. You got Nico Iamaleava. You got Dante Moore. Now, last year it was actually, if you look at the rankings, last year it was Walker Howard and now I'm going to blank on all of them. Cade Klubnik at Clemson looks like he's pretty good. Walker Howard looks like he's pretty good. I think he might actually start at Ole Miss of the three guys. So we're getting better at analyzing quarterbacks as rookies or as coming out of high school. But there's a chance that of the five quarterbacks ranked, Jackson Arnold at Oklahoma and then Malachi Nelson at USC. Those are the five that are in the top 15 this year. There's a good chance that two of them bust that aren't very good.
Right.
And if that's the case, and you're a booster, how much do you care? Now, for me, as a small business, I need ROI on that investment. So if I'm going to pay a recruit $50,000 to go someplace, I need to get return on that investment because I'm a small business owner. I don't have, but the people who can buy Maseratis and Bentleys, they got nothing else to do with their money.
I don't think Haslam's going to be too mad.
Right.
Fails.
$8 million.
Yeah.
We're in Nashville. John Ingram's the biggest booster for Vanderbilt. That $8 million is in the cup holder of the car last night. That's a rounding error on his savings account. That is not a thing that he cares about. So $8 million for a recruit for him probably is worth like he can just throw that money into a fire and it's as equally as useful for him.
Right.
So, I mean, for the 99% of human beings, we would need ROI on that, which is why paying for the success that just happened, like, again, quarterback throws for 300 yards, he comes off the field, that night he meets with boosters, he gets a couple $1,000s. That's because you gave me something. Like, you gave me the victory tonight, so I'm going to pay you for your performance. That's how college football worked forever. Now I'm going to give you even more than that for you to come to Tennessee and maybe have a chance to be good. I'm curious where the line is on how much we spend and how much we want back and how much ROI is there. I think there's going to be this big jump. And as we saw with Jaden Rashada, I think there's going to be this, it's going to kind of come back down to earth and it's going to level off. And then we'll know what the going rate is for a 5-star quarterback. And we'll go, oh, it's about $1 million a year.
Yeah.
You got to pay to get a 5-star quarterback. And I bet you the evaluations of these players gets better when the money starts coming in on how good they're going to be, right?
Well, I think it's the perfect segue to get into your abysmal SEC quarterback rankings here. Do you have it on memory?
It feels like a leading question.
I don't have it in front of me. I apologize, but
it's top of my head. I bet you I could do it.
Or I can pull it up if it's easier.
Well, everybody out there listening, at Braden Gall, you can follow along there just to hold me accountable. KJ Jefferson 1, and this is again February 1st ranking, February 2nd, whenever you're listening. This is going into spring practice. And the point of the list was to illustrate how in a different place we are today in the SEC at quarterback than last year.
So it's not
that was
necessarily a projection of how they'll do next season?
No, it's just sort of like I was looking at I think the biggest story in the SEC in the offseason from a player standpoint is what the hell are we going to do at quarterback? Because we're going to have 3 first-round picks. We're going to have Hendon Hooker, a Heisman finalist and one of the best players in school history, and the 2-time defending champion all leave the conference at the same time. That's 5 of the best 7 quarterbacks in America, 5 of the best 10 quarterbacks in America, all leaving the league at the same time, all being replaced with relative unknowns, almost exclusive unknowns.
Wasn't it similar in, maybe like 2013? Johnny Manziel,
it would have been
Aaron
14.
Murray.
Yeah. Zach Mettenberger, Dak Prescott.
Yeah.
I think you named the big ones. There's a few other ones. James Franklin, I think, was at Missouri.
And you know what happened next, I believe? I may be off on my timeline.
2014 was like...
The big...
Blake Sims was the quarterback at Alabama. That's...
I wasn't even thinking of him. Jeremy Johnson was the Heisman hopeful.
Yes. And look, it ebbs and flows. But like the real reason so we did on our show, Fringe Element Podcast, go check it out, rate, review, subscribe. We sort of went through all the battles we thought could take place and who's entrenched as a starter and who do we think is slightly entrenched and who do we think is like in an open battle. And so we just kind of talked through all the quarterback battles. And in that process of going through that, I find it, I kind of figured out who I'm favoring to win the job. Carson Beck, for example, would be my favorite to win the job at Georgia. Ty Simpson, I think I'm favoring over Jalen Milroe to win the job at Alabama. You kind of go through the process and you kind of figure out, okay, I think I've got the 14 starters projected in February. Here's what I think. And so when you do that, you start to order them and you look at them and you're like, all right, who's the best? And like what happened is I looked at this list and I was like, where's the star power? Like, and they're all gone.
Yeah.
I mean, KJ is really good. Will Rogers is really good. But even after that, like, is it Jaden Daniels? Is he guaranteed to start all 12 games over Garrett Nussmeier? Probably. But like, is he a star? Like, is he like, again, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, Stetson Bennett, Hendon Hooker, Bryce Young, like they're all gone. And so you look at what's next on the list and you're kind of going like, all right, Devin Leary's really good. I think Devin Leary's really good. I think he's going to fit really well with Liam Cohen. I think he's going to be pretty good. So I put him at 3. And I'm like, okay, I kind of know what those 3 are. They're the most established. They've played the most. They've had the most success.
You put him over Jaden Daniels?
I had Jaden Daniels at 4 because Jaden Daniels, to me, has shown flashes of brilliance in being number 1, both last year for LSU and as a freshman at Arizona State. But he also has got like 20 games of like, I don't know what I'm watching sometimes.
Yeah.
The first half of the season against LSU was kind of like, what? Do you know what the second read is on your offense? And it's not meant to be rude because I think he's a really fun player to watch.
Brian Kelly got on him he didn't have any turnovers.
Stay in the pocket.
And he said basically, We want you.
Right.
We
Throw the
don't
ball.
want turnovers, but be a little bit more aggressive.
We got lots of good receivers here. Throw it to them.
Mm-hmm.
And even then they were still fantastic in the first half as a team. They still, if they don't lose that Florida State game, I think the only game they would have really gotten beaten is the Tennessee game.
Right.
So after that, it was like, all right, I've got like 9 dudes here that could be number 5. Because I think those 4, it's hard for me to argue anybody above those 4. Because they're established starters who've started.
So you're just throwing darts on the next? Because that's what it looks like.
Well, that's fine. I mean, you can disagree with like it's February. We can. This is the beauty of.
I'm about to fight you.
That's fine. That's fine. But like, so some of it is a mixture of what we know, talent, projection, supporting cast. You kind of look around the whole thing and you go, all right, what do I think is going to happen here? Who do I think could be the best? Because that's all we do in the offseason is project. And I think I projected Carson Beck as a starter at Georgia, and I'm like, Georgia's clearly the best situation in the entire conference. It's a better situation than Alabama even is. He's been there for 3+ years. This is not a light recruit. This is a big-time recruit who's been in Todd Monken's system now for 3 years and is going to – I think he's going to step in and be – like, I think they're going to win a third one. Third national title. And I think he's going to be great. And I think he's going to step into that offense because he's got the best tight end that's ever lived in college football. Yep. He's got a good offensive coordinator. He's now adding the best wide receivers in the transfer portal. Like, I just think Georgia's unstoppable. And maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe he's terrible, and maybe Brock Vandagriff takes over. But if Brock Vandagriff's good enough, then he's probably going to be in the top 5 in the SEC too.
Right.
So I had Carson Beck there. Ty Simpson is a little bit of a reach. I understand that, but that's because I think he gives Saban what he wants, and Jalen Milroe does not, which is down the field. Yeah. They want to attack vertically. They want to attack every blade of grass. They want to spread it wide and down the field. And they didn't do enough of that this year, and it hurt Bryce. Yeah. And I think Ty Simpson, again, 5-star, number 1 quarterback in the country. Bama's got a pretty good track record lately of getting those guys to work.
Yeah, I think he'll be really good.
I think he's going to be great. So, like, okay, Ty Simpson, elite upside. And, oh, by the way, playing in Alabama. Okay, pretty good. Okay, I'm going to put you at 6. Connor Wigman at 7. Also, 5-star recruit.
Beat LSU.
No, beat LSU, almost beat Ole Miss. 8 touchdowns, no interceptions.
Lost to Auburn.
In a dumpster fire of a situation.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you take a young freshman, true freshman, who's got all the upside and the talent in the world and the pedigree, and you put him into a dumpster fire of a situation, and he throws 8 touchdowns, no interceptions, beats a team he's not supposed to, plays really well in a couple other games.
How'd he do in the bowl game?
Clearly was not a great, like, he's not ready, right? Like, clearly. But no one else has proven anymore, and we'll get to how that is. But, like, to me, it's all about the context. A guy in his 5th year or 6th year who has been a career backup or a career average quarterback, to me, I'm going to take the guy who was thrown into the garbage situation versus the guy who was on a great team with great receivers and a great system, and the guy who kind of overcame a lot more adversity at a significantly younger age with very little experience. He showed me what I wanted to see out of him, to see that the talent is for real. So that's why, and it's why I put him at the bottom of the list with Simpson and Beck, because I don't think A&M's as good of a situation. They got 2 potential All-American receivers. They got Bobby Petrino calling plays, and I saw what I needed to see from him last year to say that the talent is real. That's why I got Wigman at 7. Because after that, Spencer Sanders, I'm not even sure he's going to win the job. 43 games he started, so like 11,000 yards of offense.
Yeah, I know Stephen Lass is really high on him too.
Great athlete. Also had more turnovers than any human in college football. That's not even that's an actual stat. He's had more turnovers in the last 4 years than every other person in college football. 40 interceptions and then a bunch of fumbles. He's also missed a bunch of time with injuries. So there's a lot of questions around him.
What's his game like? Because I still haven't not gotten to watch a lot of him.
He's a super fun player. Like, I'm trying to think of a...
Is he similar to Jackson Dart?
Very similar, a little bit more athletic, but like equally as inaccurate. Which is why Kiffin went out and got 2 other guys, is because Jackson Dart's not accurate enough to run his system.
Yeah.
Dart has a leg up because he knows the system. Spencer has a leg up because of experience. I think Walker Howard is the best thrower of the football, and I would not be surprised that by like week or 2 or 3, Walker Howard is your starter, because Lane's offense is all about geometry and timing. It's about get the linebackers here, our routes go here, and the pass needs to be here at that time. And so I didn't think Jackson Dart did that enough. 61, 62%, that's not good enough. Kiffin needs it to be 68, 69, nice. 70% completion percentage. Spencer Sanders can't do that either. Turn the ball over and gets injured. Very talented, very productive. But 43 games and 11,000 yards counts for something. So that's why I had him above Spencer Rattler, who played at a better Oklahoma school.
Tennessee bias talking right here.
Better Oklahoma school with better players and still got his ass benched. Then he transfers to South Carolina, and we waited all year for Spencer Rattler to become Spencer Rattler. 2 games, he throws 9 touchdown passes against, if you take the Tennessee and the Vanderbilt game out of Spencer Rattler's resume last year, he threw 9 touchdowns and 12 interceptions.
Yeah, I heard you say that, but if you take away Tom Brady's Super Bowls, he's not the greatest of all time. You know what I mean?
13 games.
We can't just omit.
No, I agree.
Games.
I agree. That's why he's above some other guys on the list who are even far less proven than Spencer Rattler. Rattler started a whole season for Oklahoma and won a bunch of games. Like,
yeah.
You know, then he got benched. And again, 6 touchdowns in 1 game when you only throw 18 for 13 games. I'm sorry, that's an outlier. like that counts. So you know how hard it is to throw 9 touchdown passes in 11 college football games? And that's what his numbers were. 9 touchdowns, 12 interceptions in the other 11 games. And you are what you are. You're not what you are at your best. You're not what you are at your worst. You are what you are. Spencer Rattler threw less touchdown passes than Will Levis last year. And Will Levis is like a punchline for SEC fans that think he's overrated or whatever. Like Rattler is so utterly fascinating. Like, I just think he's a fascinating case study in 5-star, early starting, finds some success, changes systems, changes conference. Like, last year was so bizarre for him because they won a bunch of games, but it wasn't because of him.
Right.
And then it was because of him. And I have no idea what he is. I think he could be the 4th or 5th best quarterback in the conference. I think he could be 14th. Like,
you think he would have got drafted if he would have went?
I think he gets drafted because talent coaches think they can.
Yeah.
As long as you got ability, coaches think they can mold you into being the
not
thing.
First round or anything.
No.
Yeah.
I 4th or 5th.
Yeah.
Around where Stetson Bennett probably gets drafted, but for very different reasons. Bennett gets drafted for all the reasons that Spencer Rattler doesn't get drafted.
Right.
It's the intangibles and the leadership and the decision making, and this guy gets drafted for like size and arm talent and RPMs, and like everyone's like, can Stetson Bennett throw it in the wind? I don't know. So I think Rattler's an utterly fascinating case study, but he started like 35 games.
Yeah.
Which brings us to number 10 on the list, I believe, because I think we've gone Sanders, Rattler, and now I've got Joe Milton.
Bazooka Joe, come on, man.
Joe Milton.
Strongest arm in the world.
Cool. Somebody tweeted me about going to the Vandy game. I took my daughter to the Vandy game. We talked about this on the last episode. I took my daughter to the Vandy game, and someone was like, what are you talking about? It was raining, and he was throwing the ball 70 yards. And I was like, yeah, the receiver was only 50, though. That's the problem, is you've got to be accurate. And so the issue with Joe Milton, for everyone who wants to say, like, oh, the Orange Bowl. And
you have to be impressed with the Orange Bowl, though. I know I was.
Sure, half of Clemson's best defensive players didn't play, but that's no big deal. Half of Tennessee's best players didn't play.
They could have played with 12. They wouldn't have slowed down Bazooka Joe on that one.
Half of Tennessee's best players didn't play. So it's both. The point is, it's not real. It's not a real game because they weren't playing as full teams in a real game. It's an exhibition game. Now, is the talent always been there for Joe? Just like Spencer Rattler? 1,000,000%. It's always there. See it every time. But this is a guy who he's been in college for 5 seasons and has been a backup every single time. He has been a career back, and this is going to sound so anti-Joe Milton. It's mostly just anti-you. I think Joe Milton is one of the nicest, coolest, most likable dudes in all of college football. Nothing would make me happier than him to have the best season of his career, to win a bunch of games, prove everybody like me wrong, and you can pour mayonnaise on the end of, you can dump mayonnaise on my head at the end of the season. I'll be totally good with that because he's such a good dude. He's such a good kid, and more people should be like Joe Milton. I agree. He's also had 2 good games in 5 years of football. He has lost every starting battle he's ever had to compete in for a reason. He lost 3 starting battles at Michigan. He won the battle against Hendon Hooker for God knows what reason, and immediately showed us in one game that he wasn't good enough, that he was not as good at Hendon Hooker. Now, is it possible that he has his best season in his 6th year? Absolutely possible. Their offensive line's not as good. The receiving corps is not as good. The system's great, very conducive to his skills. If they can replace some of those pieces and have equally as good a surrounding cast, and he can take about 5 miles an hour off that fastball, he's going to have a pretty good year, and he's probably going to finish above Spencer Sanders, Spencer Rattler, one of those three that we're projecting from Alabama, Georgia, and A&M. Like, he's probably going to finish probably 4 or 5 in the conference. But to suggest that there is any evidence, statistical or otherwise, that Joe Milton is going to do what Hendon Hooker just did, to me is just batshit crazy. Like, it's
Let me ask you one
Hendon
thing.
Hooker's the best quarterback season in the history of the University of Tennessee, including Peyton Manning.
One critique of what you
replicate that.
just said, though, and I think it's a fair what you said, but you said not as good receivers, and you probably maybe you'll be right, but
McCoy's pretty good.
I think he's more talented than Tillman or Hyatt. Just they're different players, but I think he could do the Tillman role.
But not as a trio, though. Like, they're not going to have. You have to admit they're not going to have the same top 3.
Right, but I don't know how good the kid is from Oregon.
Yeah.
And then they brought in a freshman last year, Chaz Nimrod, that they love,
Yeah.
and they just signed another top 100 receiver.
Well, Squirrel's still there.
And Squirrel, and Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman were literally nothing before they started playing for Josh Heupel. Now that's not I'm not trying to completely take away from them because I think they're NFL players and they deserve to be, but I've got confidence in Josh Heupel that he can train up another receiver to
and McCoy's pedigree
potentially be as good, if not better than them.
And McCoy's pedigree was, to your point about Hyatt and Tillman, McCoy's pedigree as a recruit was way better than those two guys. I think it's more about, like, again, and I will say that I am biased here, but it's because I've watched a lot of Michigan football.
Yeah.
More than I will say this, I've probably watched more Joe Milton at Michigan than every Tennessee fan watching this, full stop. And he played one good game. In 3 years, he threw 7 touchdowns and like 8 interceptions. He played one really good game against Minnesota during 2020. And then we are all like, oh, there it is. We've seen it. The talent has been realized. And the very next 4 games were garbage.
Yeah.
He just wasn't good. And that system's not good. So
I remember.
Be fair with that. He's now in a better system.
I remember when that was a Hendon Hooker, Joe Milton battle. And that offseason, I went back and watched every Hendon Hooker game, every Joe Milton game. And I said, what the fuck are people talking about battle? How can this be a battle? And I just thought I was stupid, which I kind of am.
Wait, Hendon Hooker?
I thought Hendon Hooker was like 3 times as good as Joe Milton.
Oh, yeah.
And then Joe Milton wins the job, and I was like, I guess I don't know how to watch football or something.
No. It's so funny you say that because I was on, I think you can pull clips of all of this. You can pull clips of my show, of Fringe Element Pod, Cover 2 Pod. I go on radio in Knoxville every week. And every single week I was like, I don't understand. This is Hendon Hooker. I think who was the other kid that transferred out? Who was the part of that battle that first year of Heupel's tenure?
Was it Riley Ferguson?
No, he was a recruit that was recruited by Pruitt, I think. Anyway, I thought there was a chance. He was like a 4-star. I'm drawing a total.
Was it the guy that transferred to like South Florida? He got
out.
Got concussion issues.
He got out. I thought he was going to be the starter because I didn't think Milton, and I was like, why, and then you start to realize, okay, it's a 2-horse race. It's Milton and Hooker, and I think I spent the entire summer saying, it's Hendon Hooker, guys. Like, it's Hendon Hooker by a country mile. Like, it's not even close. It's Hendon Hooker by as far as Joe Milton can throw the football. and again, did you see the most efficient 2 seasons in the history of Tennessee football? No, we would have to print out some receipts.
I didn't think he'd be that near as that.
Right,
good.
We'd have to print out some receipts to say that. But I thought it was very obvious that he was the better player. And so I think Joe Milton is obviously the starter for now. But if Nico's as good as number 1 in the world at every position, who's to say he doesn't push Joe Milton during the summer?
Yeah.
Excuse me. And if he wins the job or is close, isn't it good for Tennessee football that he's that close to being the starting quarterback as a true freshman?
Right.
Being as good as his recruiting ranking says he is. Like that, to me, they're in a good spot. They've got the veteran who probably gives them a 7-5, 8-4, like worst case scenario. And if he's really good, you got a 10-win scenario potentially. Although I think A&M coming to town is going to be tricky.
I've
otherwise,
said this
you got the 5-star. So
is Clemson the year they had, what was his name, Kelly Bryant and Trevor Lawrence, and Lawrence overtook him.
Yeah.
But I think you could even make the
example.
case that maybe in Pie in the Sky, Chris Leak, Tim Tebow, I know kind of different
in
players,
that,
different style and everything.
Well,
but
different in that Leak had like 10,000 yards passing and like 3 years as a starter coming into that season. I think the Kelly Bryant year is really good comp, and I think Milton has way more throwing ability than Kelly Bryant ever did.
Right.
Again, the accuracy is a huge concern. I think
Kelly Bryant finished as a safety.
Probably
at Missouri or something.
I think he started 4 games, and then Lawrence took over,
Right,
and then
right.
that was it after that. Again, because the talent was so obvious. Now, I would argue, like, having watched a lot of Nico and a lot of Trevor, I don't think he's Trevor Lawrence yet. I think he's got a lot. I think he needs to eat a few pork chops.
Yeah.
Like, put some meat on the bones, get bigger, get stronger. Because Lawrence was like, I've never seen a freshman quarterback ready to play at the next level, other than maybe Trevor Lawrence. Like, I'm not sure. So, but I think that's unfair. I think that's unfair to say that about any 5-star. To say, like Jaden Rashada, I talked to some guys that saw him at the Elite 11, like with Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud, and they're like, yeah, this is one of the best quarterback prospects in America, and he is 4 years behind C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young, because that's what you're supposed to be. Like, you're not supposed to be that good at that age.
Yeah.
So if that happens with Nico, shit, man, Tennessee's in a great spot. Like, that's great for them if he's that good. I just think Joe Milton has a ceiling. Even if he plays at his best, I think he's the 3rd or 4th best quarterback in the SEC. I think they're going to have one of the best offenses in the SEC if that's the case, and maybe they win 9 or 10 games.
Yeah.
But I don't see them. I don't see them being able to run the gambit of the toughest teams that they're playing with a guy who is, again, if we're going to say that Hendon Hooker was a Heisman finalist, one of the best quarterbacks in America, and one of the best in Tennessee history, you cannot just remove that person from the team and have the team be as good.
Right.
Best offensive lineman's gone. The best 2 receivers are gone. Like, I just think you have to. I think 8 or 9 wins would be a great year. And if you keep stacking top 10 classes on top of each other, then it starts to go like this every single season. Like, this year was all house money for Tennessee fans, in my opinion. Like, you got the Alabama monkey off your back.
Yep.
One of the greatest
Florida.
memories. One of the greatest memories in the history of Tennessee football for everybody. And one of the greatest games ever played in SEC history. Like, just truly one of the greatest games ever played. And that's stuff you can buy into and live off of for another season. Because I just don't know how you beat Georgia and Alabama and run I just think it's a lot to ask of that roster without 4 or 5 top 10 classes. Like, you need 3 or 4 years. It's pretty standard.
Right.
You need 3 or 4 classes to start competing routinely with the best of the best in college football.
Well, Braden, we've been going an hour plus here. You got anything?
I didn't even notice.
Anything you want to ask me? Before we wrap this thing up?
AJ Swan, number 11 on the list.
He's pretty solid.
I think he's pretty good. Yeah, like, totally unknown, but, like, again, I think he could be higher on the list. I think I had who have I not done? I've got Graham Mertz left.
I think
Florida.
you had Brady Cook all the
Brady
way down
Cook
there.
at 14, which, again, they want Sam Horn to win the job. I've been told that they want Sam Horn to win the job, and if Sam Horn wins the job, again, Brady Cook's out this spring. That's a good thing for Missouri.
What about them adding Jake Garcia? Is he any good? I haven't watched him yet.
Garcia's supposed to be in the mix. He's going to battle with Horn, I think. And if they battle, then I think, like, again, just like with Tennessee, if your worst case scenario is 12 games of Joe Milton, you're in a pretty good spot. If your worst case scenario for Missouri is 12 games of Brady Cook, you're in a pretty good spot relative to Missouri's expectations. Graham Mertz, I think, is going to have the best season of his career because he's leaving one of the worst offensive systems in the entire country, where he did get better every year in yards per attempt, yards per game, and touchdown interception ratio at Wisconsin. And he's going to now have a real offensive coach instead of Wisconsin. Again, one of the worst offenses I've ever seen in my entire life. And so I think he'll have his best season, but, like, I don't think it's going to be special. And then Swan was 11, and why am I drawing a blank on 12? So I'm drawing a blank on who I had at 12. Who am I missing here? South Carolina, I've got, who are we missing? Who are we missing, guys? There's got to be a team we're missing.
Anyway. Auburn. Robbie Ashford.
Oh, that's who I had. Yeah, Robbie Ashford, who I think is a pretty good fit for Hugh Freeze's system, but they clearly wanted somebody else because they spent every single second of the offseason trying to get a quarterback. They
apparently went after every quarterback with academic issues for some reason.
Or non-academic issues or personal issues or not personal issues. Like, I think Auburn was like, are you alive? Can you throw a football? And if you can, come try out. It's like Lane Kiffin trying to find a punter from a frat house. Like, Auburn is just, Hugh Freeze is just out there like, hello.
Looking at people's
Anybody?
ankles. Apparently he's big on looking at ankles.
He's looking at Uncle Rico in the field out there. Like, what's he doing?
If you got skinny ankles, you can
You
play
don't,
football
you're out.
for
Oh,
Hugh Freeze.
he likes skinny ankles.
That's his
He
thing.
doesn't like ankles.
No.
Neither do I. It's fine. Not a huge fan.
So, tell the audience, where can they find all your work?
440 Sports is the company. A lot of that's Nashville-based stuff. So if you care about the Titans or the Predators, go for it. But this is we do an SEC show like you do. So Fringe Element podcast, SEC football. It is SEC every single episode, every single week, year round. We got some fun stuff planned for the off season. We're going to do some interesting. We're going to unveil some interesting ideas here pretty soon. So hopefully that's happening soon. So check it out. Fringe Element, which of course is named for that group of fans on the edge. It's just a little bit crazier than everybody else, which I think is kind of most of the SEC. So.
Yeah, and I'll put links in the description to all that. But real quick, you got me thinking about this because the SEC Media Days coming up is in Nashville. Do you have any insight, any knowledge on what they're planning to do with that? Because I know for a time there, they were going to do like a fan day. This was during COVID, when they originally were going to do Nashville. I think they were going to do Broadway. Anything you can share or anything you know about that?
Nothing I can say definitively on the record. I got to be careful here.
It sounds like you're part of it. So
I think you're right to assume that making it a more fan-friendly event is a smart business decision for both the SEC and for the city of Nashville. And frankly, really great for kids.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why you wouldn't set up booths for kids to come experience and do all the cool, run the 40, throw footballs through hoops, get autographs from their favorite players, wear helmets of your favorite team. Like, you could do so much cool shit for, like, kids.
Yeah.
And you know who pays for kids? Parents. And they have money to spend on kid shit. So I would make it, that's just hypothetically, if I was in charge and I was designing the event, I would.
Because they did all that for the draft, right?
Nashville's, all of Broadway was shut down.
Yeah.
We had the Fan Fest, we had music stage with a bunch of bands playing. Like,
right.
This is what Nashville does very well. And I think it would be a huge missed opportunity if the SEC did not make it more about the fans and less about coach speak in the media, talking to a coach for 5 minutes where he's going to say the same bullshit he says every other day of the week.
Because what that day really is, when I hear from fans over and over and over, that's the unofficial start of SEC football.
Yeah.
So why not make it a tourist event?
Make it a true kickoff classic or whatever.
Right.
I agree. And this is what Nashville does really well. We got all the hotels in the world for people to stay. We got all the infrastructure and all the planning and all the people that put these events on. I mean, we've had an NHL draft. We've had the NFL draft. We've had an NHL All-Star game, outdoor stadium series. We've got one of the best bowl games that's risen up the rankings in the last 15 years. So I think it's a no-brainer, hypothetically, if the SEC were thinking about doing that.
All right, perfect place to end it.
Cheers.
Cheers, my friend.